Welcome back. We're halfway through. Now we're going to do score, win screens, main menus, and adding a custom weapon and changing the script so it's attached to that. If you haven't seen part 1 of the FPS game, you should probably go and do that first. And if you're completely unfamiliar with Unity, go watch my intro tutorial right at the very start. So, score. Currently what we've got is a system where we defeat an enemy through a shot. You do multiple shots, the enemy is defeated. What we now need is a system for keeping a record of how many enemies we have defeated. Currently we do that with 3 shots and we've defeated our enemy, but now we need to tell our health script to inform something else. That something else needs to keep a record of how many enemies have been defeated. Games are just computer programs which are just maths. So all we need to do is to keep a record of something. So when I say keep a record, I mean it's a variable, which means it's a number. So let's go make numbers go up. What we need is an object to attach a script to. So what I'm going to do is create a new game object, but this will be an empty game object. This will have no other component attached to it apart from a transform component, because every object in your game must have a position, a rotation and a scale. Even if it doesn't have a 3D model attached to it, even if it doesn't generate sound, even if it doesn't have much in the way of script. Do you know what it does have? A transform component. So I'm going to right click and reset that component. Just need to quickly double check that this is recording. There we go. So I've just right click and reset that component. That's put it in the middle of our world. I don't want to call it game object though. I think that's going to be easy to lose later on. So its name is here, and I'm going to rename it to game space game controller and press enter. Just so I know this object's job is to keep a record of all key information in the game. If we wanted a timer, or we wanted a system where we could keep a record of all kinds of information, it probably makes sense to store it in this object. We've got a character controller for our character. Now we've got a game controller for monitoring all aspects of our game, or all aspects that we care about. You'll also notice there is a predefined tag called game controller. We may not need that quite now, but it's important to know that a tag already exists for monitoring game controllers. No, do you know what? We are going to do that. So the game controller object, I'm going to select the tag of game controller. Notice there's no space in here, but it is a capital G and a capital C. This is important in a second because the health script will find the thing with the tag of game controller and it will then instruct it to do something. Let's add a component to our game controller. So we're going to make a new script, and this new script is going to be called let's keep it consistent. Game controller spelled in the same way. Why not? Capital G, capital C. Once that's finished creating, remember that in the asset space it will create that new script. It will take a second for it to build, and double click to open it up in Visual Studio. At the minute, let me show you how easy this is. So again, we're going to take everything from 7 to 17, delete, and this script's only job is to keep a publicly accessible record, so every script and everything can see it, publicly accessible record of how many, I'm trying to think of a word here that's not the word kills. That seems a little bit inappropriate. You guys are too young to know what frags are as well. That was a thing that used to be in Unreal Tournament when that was a thing. Oh, enemies defeated. Why not? Bit of a mouthful. E-N-E-M-I-E-S is how you spell enemies. I spell defeated. I'm starting to wish I had just called it kills. Hopefully guys you'll see through this that my spelling is not as good as you would think. There we go. So, a couple of things we need to keep in mind here. I want to talk about naming conventions for a second. And keep in mind, if you haven't clocked onto this already, you can use Control and middle mouse to zoom in and zoom out to your code if it's a bit too small. Notice how I'm calling this enemies defeated with a lowercase e, no space, and a capital D. That's deliberate. You can't have spaces in variable names, that will break them. One thing we are missing though is to declare its type. Public means its accessibility, followed by its data type, followed by its name. So in this case we have a publicly accessible whole number. Remember, that's what integers are, whole numbers, and we're calling them enemies defeated. And I'm going to give that an initial value, so I'm initializing this value, so it's equaling 0 when the game starts. We haven't defeated any enemies when the game starts. That's all this script is going to do. That's it, job done. Of course it's not that simple, but if I click on my game controller, you can now see that the enemies defeated variable is visible. Notice how Unity is quite clever. It works out that because I put a capital D there, it should display it as a second word, so it's displaying its enemies space defeated. Of course though, if I go and defeat my enemies, my score's not going to go up. Score! That would have been a good word to call it. Oh well. There you go. You can see I've defeated 0 enemies despite obviously destroying that one enemy. So now what we want to do is to look at our health script, and at the moment we destroy our enemies, but now what we want to do is to go and tell the game controller, you've got a script on there called game controller, can you make the numbers go up please? So I'm in the health script after the bit where we destroy the game object, but I'm still inside of these two squiggly brackets here. I now want to say find game object with tag. This is game object uppercase G uppercase O. Notice the uppercase G this time. Game object dot find game object with tag. That's what I was looking for. Now notice there is a subtle difference here. Find game object singular with tag. Find game objects S plural with tag. They do two different things. That one will return a list, an array of all of the objects with a tag. That one will return the only thing with a tag. We want find game object singular, no S. Find game object with tag, open and close regular brackets, double quote, and we're looking for the tag of game controller. Again, spelled exactly as we've called it in the tag. So that will find the game controller dot, because once we found it we want to do something with it. We want to get component. Again, get component is the most common code you will encounter. We don't want to get the health script or anything like that because the game controller doesn't have a health, but it does have a script called game controller. And I'm choosing from lists rather than typing things out because I'm mildly dyslexic. I would rather not get it wrong. So because this is getting a little bit long, I'm just going to hide that down. So we're going to get the game controller script, open and close regular brackets, dot. Here's all the stuff we can do to our game controller script. Our game controller script currently only knows one piece of information, which is the number of enemies defeated. So if I press dot enemies defeated, I can change it. Now that will allow me to change it. I could set it to the number 1. Let's say we've defeated one enemy. Fantastic. But every time we defeat an enemy, that will set it to the number 1. We don't want to do that every time. We don't want to defeat 10 enemies and have it set to 1 every time. So we're not going to set it to a value. We're going to make it go up by 1. You saw that subtracting earlier is minus minus. To make something go up, you do plus plus. This won't... that worked. There we go. So that will get the enemy's defeated value, that variable, and make it go up by 1. Let's see if that works, okay? Make sure they're all saved, all of your scripts. And notice how I'm testing one thing at a time here. I'm not doing lots of things at once. I'm writing it, testing it, assessing it. I'm going to select the game controller, and you can see that we have 0 enemies defeated. I'm going to go and defeat our cube. 1, 2, 3. I've now defeated 1 enemies. Fantastic. If I go out of play mode and I duplicate this, I could do Control C and Control V to make a duplicate. Then I can move my duplicate, or you can just press Control and D, which makes an immediate duplicate. So now with the game controller selected, I'm going to press play, and I'm going to see I get 1 enemy defeated, 2 enemies defeated, 3 enemies defeated. Well done, you are winner. So you could now expand this into any system that you wanted, where it could be you defeat 5 enemies in your map or a certain number, and you've won the game, or whatever it is you might imagine. So that's a score. That's working, that's fine. Now we need to change it so we go to a certain win screen when a score is reached. So what we're going to do here is we're going to change our code to take us somewhere, and then we're going to make the place for it to take us. So I'm thinking the easiest way to do this is to modify the code that we've written here. Currently we're saying enemies defeated, and we're just changing that variable. It is much better practice to create a public void. Notice that I'm in the game controller script here again. I'm creating a public void. This is going to be called update enemies. Open and close regular brackets, open and close squiggly brackets. And of course, you can slow this down and play it at your own pace and pause it if I'm going a bit too quick. So when we update the number of enemies, we are now going to do our enemies defeated goes up by 1, which is what we were doing before, but now we can say if the number of enemies defeated is equal to a number of your choice, or greater than or equal to a number of your choice. Let's say 3. We've got 3 cubes in our game. Once we've defeated all 3, something's going to happen. So once we've defeated 3, open and close squigglies, this is where we write go to a different level. In Unity they're called scenes. So if I wanted to change scenes, I want to call the scene manager, and I want to instruct the scene manager to do something. But you'll notice if I search down the list, I have got scene manager there. How clever is Visual Studio nowadays? This shouldn't work. That's amazing! Okay, right. So what you'll notice at the top is it's added this Unity Engine.scene management import. It's using that, which is what I was going to show you. We used to have to manually add. Unity and Visual Studio have now made our lives an awful lot easier by trying to reference the scene manager. Has added that automatically. Oh, that's good. So on line 14, I've got scene manager dot load scene. So I've got all these settings for different things. I want to load scene, and then open and close regular brackets, open and close double quotes. This is where you write the name of the new scene you want to load. We haven't written a win screen yet. Doesn't exist. We haven't made one. But assuming we do, and we call it win with a capital W at the end of the line, a semicolon to say that you're done. Once we try and go to that win screen, as long as we've got something with that name, it will work. Control S to save it. To show you that this is currently broken though, there is no win screen to go to, let's go and defeat all 3 enemies, and I expect to get an error when we get there. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm suspicious by the lack of an error. That makes me nervous. Okay, not a problem. Anyway, what we're going to do is make our new scene. We need to create a win screen for it to go to. So to do this, you right click anywhere in the asset space down here. So I'm going to right click on asset space. You can also get to asset and create scene. That does exactly the same thing. So next to game object, you've got asset, creating a scene. I tend to right click in the asset space and create a scene. Does exactly the same thing. Then we need to name our new scene. I'm going to call it win with a capital W, so it matches exactly the code we've already written. What I'm going to do though, before I change and go into my win screen, I'm just going to do a quick Control and S to save this scene, which is called Playground. And if you remember, we got here in the starter assets folder, in the first person, in the scenes folder, Playground, that's this scene, double clicking on it, that's this scene. Go back to assets and click to win. I've got an empty scene. That hasn't deleted your previous scene, it's not got rid of it, it's not made it go away. It's still there. You can still get to your scene under starter assets, first person, scenes, playground. It's still there, not gone anywhere. but that can sometimes be a bit intimidating when it looks like your entire work has vanished. But it's just changing between the scenes, and the hierarchy now shows all of the objects currently in this scene. We just want to put a bit of text on the screen to say that you've won. That's all we're going to do. Unity UI is a strange thing. So Unity interface. We're going to do the game object, UI, and I'm going to insert a piece of Text Mesh Pro. We have to import Text Mesh Pro Essentials for this to work, so you get a little pop-up. I'm going to import TM Pro Essentials. Opens up Visual Studio again, don't know why. And then I want to scroll out. The way UI works is you get this big rectangle that represents your canvas, and you can zoom out and 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 zoom out, and you can see that it's huge. So I'm just using middle mouse to zoom out. You can alternatively press the 2D button, which is up here, that gives you a straight on view. So all I'm going to do is position this text. You can change it as if it were a text box, position it, and we're just going to write "you have won," whatever. You can center align it, you can change all sorts of different properties. It's a slightly convoluted process to change the font, but I'll show you that in a later tutorial. So I'm going to have it say "you've won." I'm going to change the font size to be whatever, and I'm going to keep it really basic for today, but there will be other tutorials about how to make really good user interface, but at the minute, really simple. I'm going to go out of 2D mode. I'm going to Control S to save this. If I do however press play, it will load this scene, and we'll see what happens. That's what your win screen looks like. And then I'm going to go back to starter assets, first person, scenes, playground, and now if I press play and defeat all 3 enemies, hopefully it will take us to our win screen. Click, 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 click. It won't. And I think I figured out why we didn't get an error before, but I was expecting one. So there's one final step that you need. Also notice if you're really, really far away like I am here, you can just double click on your game controller. It will zoom in a bit. The reason why it's not working is under File and Build Settings. That's where you guys need to go now. File and Build Settings. These are the current scenes in our game. Sample scene is not the scenes that we care about. So I'm going to select sample scene from our list and delete it. That doesn't delete any scenes from your game, it just removes it from the list. Playground, I want to drag and drop in there. Alternatively, you can press this button for add the currently open scene. And I also want to go back to assets and add our win screen into that space. Notice the build order. If I were to turn this into a proper game, it would play the level playground first, and then it would be able to take us to win. So when we wrote our script earlier that said scene manager, load scene, win, that's what this is doing. It is going into the build manager, this is the scene manager, and looking for the thing called win. It must be in this space in order for it to find it. Now historically this throws an error, so I'm curious why it didn't. 1, 2, 3. Enemies defeated 3. It's because I'm a simpleton. That's why this isn't working. So if you clocked on before me, well done, give yourself a pat on the back. The reason why this isn't working is our health script is currently still just making our number go up. So this code here, which is to update the number of enemies, that's not being executed by anything. It exists, it's ready to go, but nothing is using it. So in our health script, our number of enemies defeated, we're going to replace the get the game controller dot enemies defeated plus plus plus. We're going to replace that instead with update the number of enemies. Open and close brackets, semicolon, say that you're done. So what we instead want to do is to go to your game controller script and run this chunk of code, which is what update enemies is, whereas before we were just making this number go up, and I'd forgotten that we hadn't changed that. So I've saved those scripts. The giveaway for me there something wasn't right was the fact I wasn't getting an error. So when it doesn't behave the way you think, it's an indication it's not quite doing what you think it is. Whereas now, we've defeated 3 enemies and we've won our game. If I leave play mode, there we go, we can see we return to our scene. So we've now got a win screen. once we achieve a score. If you do it, you've got this far guys in 2 hours, you're doing quite well. Just want a really quick main menu, and then we're going to add a custom weapon. I don't expect some of the user interface stuff here to really stick with you guys. It can be quite convoluted and quite complicated, and as we do it, it gets a lot easier. So let's go make ourselves a main menu the same way we did Win. I'm going to right click and create a new scene. This is going to be called main menu. Notice I haven't put a space in there, and there's an uppercase M and an uppercase M for main menu. I'm going to double click on our main menu, and just like we did a moment ago, game object UI for user interface, I would like a piece of text, and I'm going to go in 2D mode because I'm dealing with user interface. Middle mouse to pan. Scroll. Okay, I'm just going to put a text box up there. It's going to say the name of our game when duty calls. I'm sure no one will see any problems with me calling our first-person shooter game that. Make it big, central line it. You guys can have all sorts of fun. What I will, however, show you here is how to do buttons and also how to change your background. So the hierarchy at the minute is a canvas, which is the white rectangle. The text, which is Text Mesh Pro, you can see there. But what I also want to do is to right-click on our canvas and create a UI element, and I'm going to create a panel. What this will do is create this panel, this rectangle, that is a part of the canvas, it's a child of it. And on here you can change its colour by clicking the kind of white rectangle. You can change the colour that you want. You can also change the alpha value, which is its transparency. Let's say I wanted this to be black. Notice though your white text has now vanished behind your panel, and this is where the hierarchy comes into its name, lives up to its name. The canvas is a parent, which has the text as a child and the panel as a child. But if I grab the text and drag it onto the panel, notice not the blue line, I want it over, that will now make the text a child of the panel, which makes it draw on top of the panel. So it's all about your ordering, which is why it's called the hierarchy of importance. So we've got our piece of text there. What I'm also going to do is right click on the panel, UI and button. Button using Text Mesh Pro. And again, you can change the size of your button. Notice that your button, if you scroll down here, you can't find the way of changing its text. When you clicked on the text, it was really easy. It's there. The button, however, there's no way of changing the text, and that's because the button has its own child. So if I click the little drop down, the button has a child, which is its text, that can be moved independently of the button. So I'm going to Control Z because I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to change this to say play game, and when we press the button, we're going to load our main scene, which was called Playground. Important again to note that we need to add this to our scene manager. So File, Build Settings, add the currently open scene, which is our main menu, and then I want to look at my order. My main menu should probably load before my level, which will load before my win or lose screen if I had a lose screen. So main menu is now living at the top. So we need to tell this button when you are clicked, so I'm going to click on button, when a user clicks you, so on click, which is under the button component, what do we want to do? And this does require a bit of code. And this is, I'll be honest, a funny process. Don't tell Anastasia I've said that, but this is a funny process. So under the asset space, we're then going to make another script. No, we're going to do this on the canvas, sorry. So with the canvas selected, we're going to add a new component, and this is going to be called menu. Just going to call it menu with an uppercase M. New script, create and add. Minimize Visual Studio so we can reopen Visual Studio by clicking the word menu or by clicking on that. I'm going to click on here to show you how it works. Again, this is really simple. I'm going to delete the starting code that it comes with, and what we want here is a public void, because this is a function that we want the button to access, and we're going to call this load main game. Notice how I'm using uppercase again to differentiate L and M and G, all one word. Load main game, open and close regular brackets, open and close squiggly brackets, and then what we want to do is to use the scene manager just like we did before. Scene manager, which will automatically add the bit at the top, which is very nice. Scene manager.load scene, and the name of the scene that we want to load, which I'm sure was playground. It may want the entire list, but I'm just going to try playground for now, and we'll find out in a second if this works. Capital P for playground, semicolon, say that we're done. Okay, that line of code again doesn't do anything. Close that down. That line of code doesn't do anything until we click the button, and we tell the button when the button is clicked. So this on-click event here, we're going to click the plus icon, and then in this slot we click the canvas. Now this is a sort of thing, we need to drag the canvas from there into that slot. If I left click on the canvas, I lose it, it just selects the canvas. So back to the button, this isn't a click then drag, this is a left click, still holding, still holding, still holding, still dragging, still dragging, still dragging, popping in there. Alternatively, you can click the little circle and you can choose the canvas from the list of options in the scene, whatever you find easier. Then you can choose the drop down that says no function and choose from the script we wrote that was called menu the function that was called load main game. So when we press play now, it should ask the canvas to load its menu script and to load the main game. So let's press it and see what we get. Loads the game, perfect. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, takes us to our win screen. Well, that's promising. So our main menu is now working as expected. Finally, I'm just going to show you how you can customize a weapon. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to Control S to save that. We're going to go back to our starter assets, our first person, our scenes and our playground. And keep in mind we're still in 2D mode, so I'm going to go out of 2D mode and I'm going to double click the game controller so we can zoom in. All I'm now really interested in is, well, making a weapon for our dude, because at the minute he's got laser eyes, he just looks at something and defeats them. I'm going to go to the asset store. Again, window and asset store together, and I'm going to search for a certain type of weapon. I don't know what I want. Grab a sci-fi rifle, why not? You'll do, factory of models. So I'm going to choose this one, and I encourage you to do the same just for now while you follow the tutorial, because the direction the weapon is facing matters. So I'm going to open that in Unity or download or whatever option you get over there, add it to your assets, download it and then import it. What that will again do is in your assets add sci-fi gun or whatever that package was called, and prefabs are what we're looking for. So I've got a series of different weapons here that will load little examples in a second. What we need to do is position them to the side of our character. Don't worry if they've gone pink, that's just a side effect of the template I've asked you to use with the Universal Render Pipeline URP. So we're going to let's de-pink it first actually. I'll show you how to de-pink things if you get a pink problem. So I'm going into the materials folder, Sci-Fi Gun Light, Gun 2, and you can see you've got all of these pink materials. I'm going to click on all of them, so I'm left clicking on that one, I'm holding down Control on my keyboard, and I'm clicking and I'm clicking and I'm clicking and I'm clicking and I'm letting go of Control. That lets you do a multi-select because you can't do a drag select. So I'm going to select all of those. I'm then going to go to Edit, Rendering, Materials, and convert built-in materials to URP. And that should fix your texture. Sometimes that's just a quirk you get when we're using this pipeline. However, it's really hard to check, is that gun lined up with the player? is that what they see? We can click on the game mode and see, and that happens to look okay, but it's really hard to line up. So Unity is designed to be customizable. So if I grab the game window and drag this around, I'm going to snap it over here. And what this allows you to do is to edit in the scene view and see what you'll see actually in game. What I am going to change though is this word in the game window. It says free aspect. I'm going to click on that and change the aspect ratio to 16:9. That means I'll always see what it would look like on a regular monitor rather than getting it all squished. So I'm just going to use my move tools and I'm going to change that. Just showing you the problem with this though. This gun is just loose in the scene, so when the player moves around, the gun doesn't follow. So what we need to do is we need to make the sci-fi gun a child of the main camera. So I'm going to grab that and drag it up to main camera, literally on it again. That makes it a child, and now as the main camera looks up and down, the gun should also look up and down as well, which is what you can see. And that is done. There's one last little thing that you can consider though, because currently the gun isn't shooting. It's still the character who is shooting, it just so happens that there is a gun lined up. If you wanted to change, so with the main camera selected, if you didn't want the shoot script on the camera, if you wanted it on the gun, all you have to do is to right click and remove component from the camera, select gun, choose shoot, add that to the gun, and that will work. This assumes the gun is pointing the correct direction, which is the blue axis here. If the blue axis is pointing forward, this will be fine. If the blue axis is pointing any other direction, it's beyond the scope of this activity to show you how to fix that, so I just put it back on the character for now. But ultimately, let's cross off all of those things. There you go. You've built your first game. Make sure you demonstrate it to your teacher so they can sign that off that you've done as many as you've done, and well done everybody. Enjoy playtesting your game. Think about how you can customize it, what else you can add, what other assets from the asset store you would like to improve and to modify. And I'll just leave you with one last quick thing if you've got a little bit of spare time. In the asset space, I'm going to right click and create a new material. So right click and find a material. I'm going to call this material red, and I'm going to change its colour, which is its base map over here. I'm going to change it to red, and then if you drag and drop onto each of your enemies in the scene view, now they're red and they're easier for you to target. Hopefully that was useful guys. We look forward to seeing your progress, and see you soon for the next tutorial. Do take care.